The honorable ministers, deputy ministers, assistant ministers, distinguished heads of delegation, ladies and gentlemen, of course I come from a landlocked country, so I'm sure that you would hear a few things definitely from the rest so far. And ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the India Foundation and its hosts from Vietnam, Singapore, and Bangladesh for including Afghanistan in this third and very timely Indian Ocean Conference. The theme of the conference on building regional architectures builds on the Sagar discourse, which is underpinned by the common objective of security and growth for all in the Indian Ocean region, as the Honorable Minister of External Affairs of India, Sushma Swaraj, noted yesterday. Coming from a landlocked but increasingly land-linked country, Afghanistan, it is quite instructive for me to listen to many distinguished speakers discussing the challenges and opportunities that involve blue oceans. As I listened yesterday and today, many of the difficulties facing maritime security are apparently land-based, and their resolution requires an inclusive approach which promotes cooperation and partnership between littoral and landlocked countries to address their shared problems. It goes without saying that maritime security, on which much else depends, is interconnected with events in landlocked countries. Afghanistan is a prime example. Over the past 40 years, geopolitical tensions have unfortunately imposed very destructive conflicts on what is one of the most naturally endowed countries at the heart of rising Asia. An absence of peace in Afghanistan to enable sustainable development that secures the future of our youthful population, poverty permeates the Afghan society. And this, unfortunately, provides an enabling environment for such maritime security challenges, which our colleague just mentioned, as terrorism, drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and human trafficking, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 17 years, Afghanistan has been a victim of external aggression in the form of state sponsorship of terrorism. State sponsorship of terrorism. As a proxy of a coastal state, the Taliban have daily killed and maimed hundreds of Afghans. It's so tragic, and I'm sure that you watch these events, these tragic events on TV every day, while destroying, of course, the Taliban, the infrastructure that should help connect and integrate Afghanistan with our surrounding resourceful regions in the north and south for increased trade, business, and investment. State-sponsored terrorism has allowed some 20 other terrorist networks with global and regional reach to operate out of Afghanistan. At the same time, this imposed insecurity has enabled a permissive environment for mass drug cultivation and production in Afghanistan, which now provides more than 90% of regional and global demand for drugs. In turn, revenues from drug trade finances terrorism and fuel dysfunctional corruption that undermines governance and rule of law, which together destabilize drug-producing and drug transit countries alike. Because of the interconnectedness of these imposed security challenges, Afghanistan is also facing a complex humanitarian crisis with diminishing human security. Therefore, this makes our country a major source of refugees and asylum seekers were often ferried by human smugglers to Europe, Australia, and elsewhere. As we see, what is imposed on and happens in countries like Afghanistan directly affect maritime security. This dangerous situation necessitates that littoral and landlocked states no longer pause but join hands, pool their resources, and share intelligence to pursue and implement a common counterterrorism strategy, one that doesn't make any distinction between terrorist networks. Alongside this effort, they must work together to free their nations of abject poverty, knowing that a lack of human security allows terrorists, extremists, and state sponsors of terrorism to recruit among the jobless, destitute youth to radicalize, brainwash, and exploit them in conflicts of their choice. Indeed, the best way to fight poverty that feeds terrorism is to foster political and security confidence building to the regional economic cooperation. The latter can serve as an important enabler in deepening connectivity, enhancing competitiveness and productivity, lowering transaction costs, and expanding markets in any region. But how can all this be done? And in fact, Afghanistan has already put forth a number of strategic solutions for adoption and implementation by our coastal and landlocked neighbors, and these include the Heart of Asia Istanbul process, the Regional Economic Cooperation Conference on Afghanistan, or RECA, the Kabul process for peace and security cooperation, and the joint counterterrorism and counter-narcotics strategy. We have worked hard to establish these Afghan-led processes to help secure regional cooperation for Afghanistan's stabilization and sustainable development. And it goes without saying that a stable Afghanistan at the heart of rising Asia will help ensure stability and prosperity throughout our surrounding regions. That is why it is in the best short and long-term interests of coastal and non-coastal countries to participate in and to double and triple their efforts to achieve the shared goals of these Afghan-led regional security and cooperation mechanisms. Of course, every tangible step these countries take towards using Afghan-led processes will help minimize their own and other countries' vulnerability to terrorism and its state sponsors. That is why time is of the essence, and they must reaffirm their often pledged commitments to the implementation of the projects, programs, and policies proposed under these Afghan-led mechanisms of regional cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, last November, the 7th Regional Economic Cooperation Conference on Afghanistan, RECA, took place in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. The conference focused on deepening connectivity and expanding trade through investment infrastructure and improving synergy. RECA remains a major opportunity for Afghanistan's littoral and landlocked neighbors to take stock of the progress made so far. And besides working together to address the challenges and bottlenecks, they should move on to commit the financing and investment needed with respect to the priority projects in the key areas of energy, transport networks, trade and transit facilitation, communications, and business-to-business and labor support. Moreover, last November, the 7th Ministerial Conference of Heart of Asia, with its political, security, and economic confidence-building measures implementation mechanism, took place in Baku, Azerbaijan. Afghanistan aims to deepen synergies and complementarities among the interconnected projects of RECA and Heart of Asia process, therefore maximizing their impact on sustainable development, not only in Afghanistan, but also throughout our surrounding regions. This should encourage the country participants to assess their shared security and development needs and to bolster their engagement with Afghanistan accordingly in order to initiate the implementation of the proposed projects with win-win benefits. Because sustainable development is impossible without durable stability, last year we relaunched the Kabul process for peace and security in Afghanistan. Through this Afghan-owned and Afghan-led process, a results-oriented peace strategy has been laid out, the key purpose of which is to engage in unconditional, direct talks with the Taliban. Our peace strategy aims to separate reconcilable Taliban insurgents from transnational terrorist networks. But to succeed in this endeavor, we rely on honest and tangible regional cooperation, foremost on the closure of the sanctuaries and other forms of support which the Taliban enjoy in our region. In parallel to our peace strategy, we're pursuing a joint counterterrorism and counter-narcotics strategy. The two strategies mutually reinforce one another as our counterterrorism and counter-narcotics efforts not only contribute to similar efforts by increasing the number of reconcilable Taliban who otherwise would refuse to discontinue violence. Ladies and gentlemen, considering these major opportunities for regional security and development cooperation, we've welcomed and strongly support the South Asia strategy of the United States. The strategy has followed a conditions-based approach to helping stabilize Afghanistan. And its key objective is to help close all extremist and terrorist safe sanctuaries in Pakistan, which is where the Taliban get indoctrinated, trained, equipped, and deployed from into Afghanistan to destabilize our country. We strongly believe that the full execution of the U.S. strategy and partnership with coastal and littoral states that share our security and development interests will not only help stabilize Afghanistan, but also ensure security as a precondition for sustainable development across our surrounding regions. Thank you very much.